So, I think it's time we move to All Quiet on the Western Front. Netflix movie. Once again, this is spoiler free, so you are good to go to listen to this if you haven't seen All Quiet on the Western Front. This is a remake of a film. I don't know what exactly the year was, Ricky Flicks, of the original. Do you know what the original was? What year?
That would be a no.
I'll look it up in a second, but I'll give you the info. So this is streaming on Netflix. You can watch it right now. It's a German film. So this is Germany's selection for best international film at the Oscars this year. Didn't seem like it got a lot of buzz, and I was pretty critical of this because this is a remake of an absolute classic, one of the most iconic novels of World War One, 1929 novel. So it's literally 10 years after the events of World War One. Pretty responsive to the time, and also, man, it's quite the reaction, right, to this world scale issue, especially written in 1929. We have the fall of Germany in World War One, right? All what's going on with their economy, right? And you got the hyperinflation going on. And then during 1929, we're starting to feel the buildup of the Nazi party, right? The fascist party, and with one Adolf Hitler. So the timing of this is pretty incredible. So it's 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb. It's got 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. The synopsis reads: war breaks out in Germany in 1914. Paul Baumer and his classmates quickly enlist in the army to serve their fatherland. No sooner are they drafted than the first images from the battlefield show them the reality of war. Okay. Interesting synopsis. I probably should have picked a different one. Ricky, this movie, first off, give me ISO. Give me ISO. Give me Jeremy Lin. Okay. Top of the key. Everybody good. Pass it.
There you go.
Okay. Clear out. Everybody clear out. This movie is a remake of a classic, right? All Quiet on the Western Front. German-made movie. I think it's excellent that it was a German-made movie because this is the German perspective of World War One. And a lot of times the war movies we see, they are glorifying war in a way. They are rewarding those who won wars. There's a very famous phrase, obviously, you heard growing up through school. History is written by the victors, right? All Quiet on the Western Front is so different because it takes the historical lens of the loser and what it was like. And this movie, I think, did an incredible job setting you in the perspective of someone, a German, in Germany in 1917, and what the propaganda and what the messages from government and the military did to these people. This is a movie about a 17-year-old with his buddies, right, looking to enlist, thinking in 1917, this is the year the U.S. enters World War One, and this is the year, okay, where the final push is made, right? The Eastern Front closes, Western Front's being closed in upon. These Germans at home are being fed this information that they are taking Paris. The Western Front, they don't know, is at a stalemate. They don't know about the trenches and no man's land and how it's like a desolate, like, territory of destruction. Instead, these guys are 17 saying we need to go fight because we're going to be a part of this incredible moment for our country. And you have like them enlisting, and you have them getting pump up speeches from these generals thinking like we're taking France. And then they get out there to no man's land and they notice a stalemate that they're in currently. And they notice their life is about to go to hell. So like the history is written by the loser aspect here for this movie, I think is an incredible way to give a different perspective of a war movie. Like we're used to like US war movies, feel good stories. This couldn't be more the opposite. This is like one of the best anti-war war movies ever made. And I'm talking about the remake. And it also reminds me of something. We saw an incredible remake last year. And one of our favorite movies of 2021, Steven Spielberg remade West Side Story. And we always said, like, this might be better than the original. The same can be said here. This remake is from a German, okay, looking back 100 years ago on this event. And knowing what comes after directly with the rise of fascism, World War II, and someone, right, who can look upon the history in the decades after, it's having that historical lens of the loser, but also from a German, like it's in German. You have to have the subtitles on. I think it's incredibly powerful. And when I say like anti-war war movie, like this movie couldn't have been more bleak. And that is probably the best thing about it, right? It's just like how it was. It just tells us like there's not going to be a moment here where you're like, that was awesome. It's like literally depression after depression, but like they try and do it in an entertaining way, and they're pretty successful. Like gore wise, it's there. Just like people getting buried under like trenches and like people getting bombed to smithereens. I just thought it was really bleak, but it had to be. Whenever you thought there was hope on the horizon, it was gone completely. Whether you think it's armistice, 11th hour, right, of the 11th month, the 11th day of the 11th month, it's all going to end. But no, right when you see hope, they take it away completely. This movie captured it so well. It's so depressing. And I don't have many critiques for it other than a few small things that I could talk about later. But I just want to tell you, I think this is one of the best war movies I've seen in a long time. And I think it's just different from what we've seen previously. And maybe it's a remake that we need because all the war movies we see recently are like putting heroes in front of us and like not really, and just saying like country's perspective, the winners. This is different. So I'll stop there because I've been going on for like 5 minutes.
I like seeing the other side, right? Like seeing the loser side or the side that you don't usually get to see. Miracles and Men is a 30 for 30 that was done on the 1980 Olympics, USA versus Soviet Union, and it's the side of the Soviet Union. And I think that's a great 30 for 30 again. And the best part of it is that it's the side that you haven't really gotten to see. So that's what makes it interesting. Now, I do have again, we're kind of pitching movies here, right? We're pitching like why you should
Yep.
watch this movie. And someone like me, like I have a couple of things, but I'll start with one. You said it's bleak, and it's like it's not like there's some moments that aren't awesome.
Well,
It's not
mhm.
glorified, right? And like someone that's not a history buff like yourself or into history, I think one of the big reasons why they watch war movies is that they glorify the war and there's something to hang their hat on, right? Something they remember when they walk out of the theater or whatever, right? Besides the actual gory aspect of it, they have a story to cling on to. So, is there a story here? And do you have to be a history buff to be watching this movie?
It certainly helps if you're a history buff. Like for me, this was gold. Whether it's like the trenches, the detail that goes into that, whether it be like the 1917 setting where the Germans think that they're winning World War One, only to volunteer as a 17-year-old, be thrown into the in the trenches into no man's land and seeing what actually is happening. I think as a history teacher, there were moments where I was like, I would show this to my class, some of these scenes. I would probably need a permission slip to show these scenes because that's so violent and gory. But like, there'd be scenes where, okay, it was really the full scope of it. This person, whoever made this movie, has a true understanding. The attention to the trenches, the different weaponry, like the a use of machine guns that really popularized during World War One, the torches, the flamethrowers that are used that are such an explosive moment in the trailer. By the way, if you haven't seen it, there are scenes where tanks are being first introduced and they're going over the trenches in some incredible shots. And then there's the gas mask, and there's like incredibly heartbreaking moments involving the gas, and it's bleak, but it's real. You believe it. I know there was a movie, I never saw it, but like what I'm talking about, it's like the exact opposite. And you're looking for like a Saving Private Ryan feel, you're going to this movie as opposed to like Midway. Remember that movie came out, World War II, like one of the Jonas Brothers was in it and stuff.
Yeah,
Like that's like, yeah, you want to. That's a patriotic movie, right? That's just like you want to see
feel
us
good.
like win the Battle of Midway, gain momentum on the Pacific Front during World War II. We're here to know what war was like in 1917. And we got a great idea in the movie 1917 from Sam Mendes and starring George Mackay, right? From a few years back, and one of the greatest movie years of
Your
all
boy.
time in 1919. My boy, you're right. Cast him as the next Flash. And this movie, the first one take, there's a great one take here. And this is me selling it to non-historians. That one take you love in 1917, where George Mackay, he's sprinting across almost the front of the trench, almost into no man's land. He's getting knocked over. There's bombs going everywhere, right? If you love that moment, there are multiple moments like that in this movie. It was clearly inspired by 1917. How could it not be? There's one shot where this guy who is kind of a wuss, right? And he is being forced to go above the trenches. He's being thrown in front by this general who's screaming at him, right? He's walking through no man's land. It's the first scene, right? And then it's just, you're seeing all this horror around him, and the camera's just following him. There's an amazing cut to the title card. And it's an explosive way to start the movie. If you like violence, gore, realism, this is your type of movie. If you're a history buff, it's even more so. And it doesn't matter. It's in subtitles. We know that doesn't matter based on like what we've seen from the international category at the Oscars these past few years. The only beef I have with the movie, okay, a couple things. The sound, I think they went a little too hard. They were trying to make an early 20th century movie feel a little more modern. It was like harsh drum beats that felt random. There was like horns that are being blown that were just like, why is this sound here? Just doesn't feel like it fits. But at the same time, the cinematography was unbelievable. Like the shot, as I said before, of the tanks going over the trenches, it was like, that is Oscar worthy. That's auteur cinema right there. And then the other beef I had was some of the writing of the characters, the friends, pretty underdeveloped. But there's one relationship that really tugs at your heartstrings and it really destroys you at the end of the movie. So if you're looking for good writing, it's pretty much there. Some fantastic motifs. If you're familiar with the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. Some signs of humanity when all humanity is lost. It is definitely worth a watch if you love war movies, whether you're a history buff or not.
I was gonna say, so I did watch the first 30 minutes of this movie. Um, just didn't have time to finish it, to be honest. 2.5 hours. Um, in the first scene, like that sets you up for what type of movie this is gonna be. And I think, like, yeah, like that was clearly inspired by 1917, but still, like different outcome, different situation, like everything. I do think it does separate itself, but I did really like the first 30 minutes. I just didn't have time to finish it. I'm not trying to belittle the movie or anything. But going into like my next kind of theme here is that so in the first 30 minutes when I'm watching, you get the group of kids that you refer to, and there's clearly like that one kid, like that's the like the protagonist here.
Paul.
Is Paul, yeah, Paul. Is Paul or any of these other guys gonna be looked at as because like they're all like this is most of their like first full feature film. Will they be in more stuff that will be like recognized and actually see in the future? Or is it like, oh no, they're German actors or kid actors. We won't see them again. And then my second question would be, who else is in this movie? Is Baron Zemo himself. So how much of him is in this movie? He's probably the biggest name on the cast card here. And was he good?
So I'll start off with Paul Baumer, the character in the movie. He's played by Felix Kammerer. He was awesome. He's the lead. And why I say he's awesome, I think this director put the cast members in an excellent position, and these writers put them in an excellent position, okay, with these young guys and how they transformed throughout this movie. The writing definitely lends a helping hand, and our history lends a helping hand. Like they do a great job. Like they like the imagery too. Like they're in Germany. They're talking about joining the war, and it's so bright. And that is the brightest the cinematography ever gets. It's when they're in Germany, the prospects and like the idea of like propaganda and government information being relayed to the people, right? It's very relevant when you think about what's going on in Russia right now, to be honest. Like the information is being relayed to Russians and like with the situation with Ukraine and like, can you trust your government, especially during wartime? It was so bright during that time. And then they go through this insane transformation. And Paul Baumer is so hardened immediately by his experiences. It seems like once he hits no man's land, he accepts it faster than all the other cast members in the movie. And once he recognizes that, like you're like, okay, I believe that we're going to be sticking with this guy for most of the movie, if not all the movie, right? Like he's someone we are going to follow. Right. And his other friends are like, they just want to join because they want to be a part of, right, 1917. They think they're about to close this war, end this war, dive into Paris, take Paris and end World War I. And little do they know what's coming ahead of them. Like in Baumer's relationship with Kat, who's another character in this movie, that's one of the strongest parts of this movie, right? One of the strongest parts. I can't, in terms of acting and watching those two play against one another, I can't recommend it more. What was the other question? Sorry. Brule?
Yeah, Daniel Bruhl. Like how are we
So
feeling?
he has an interesting position because he is a part of the German government. Okay. And he is someone that's not in no man's land, but you see the pain that he's going through also makes this movie interesting. It doesn't just show the dynamic on a battlefield like Saving Private Ryan does. It shows what's going on behind the scenes and the signing of armistice by the Germans, by Daniel Brühl, all right, during that time, and what pains them to do so, knowing the German war machine that existed in the early 20th century. And I think that's a good dynamic. It kind of gives you a break a little bit from all the gore and violence that's happening while These guys are in no man's land. They're in the trenches. They're really going through it. And it shows like, wow, these guys have it great being a member of the government. And now he's going to have to sign this armistice, telling his people everything we told you, right, reported back to the Germans was a lie. Everything we said was false, right? It's just, to me, it was a great break. And for those, like I said, it was bleak, but I can't say that's a detraction of the movie. It's just true. And that's what the book's all about, right? It's just, it was like World War One was horrifying. It was horrifying with like the advancement of weaponry and like what people were expecting. People with gas masks, flamethrowers, tanks for the first time, machine guns for the first time. Such a scary moment, especially for the 17-year-olds that are entering here. And it captured it so well. I can't recommend this movie more for a war movie like fan or a history buff. It's fantastic. It's
Score?
fantastic. 88. 88. It doesn't peak 90 for me. I was thinking about going 89, but like the acting great. Some of like this underdeveloped characters around Kat and Paul, and I think the sound doesn't really work. But you watch this, and even within the first couple shots, you know it's cinema, right? It's just like, oh yeah, this is the good stuff. This is the good stuff. We get off on that. That's good. Cut. All right. But yeah, 88. I can't wait for you to watch it and hear your impressions of the movie. All right. My vote for best international feature this year. I think I might be a little biased. So,
and the only one you've seen.
Yeah. I already know what the other options are. I do have to watch from last year, Worst Woman in the World. I never saw
Worst person in the world.
Worst person, not woman. Sorry, that sounds sexist. But worst person in the world. Worst person in the world.
That's streaming.
It looks great. Yeah, Hulu. All right. And this is also like when you think of like international features, other than Parasite, like sometimes you're like, yeah, it was a little boring. You know, it's not a lot of action. Like I like Drive My Car from last year. I thought that was sensational. But like there's like dull moments. You're not going to find a dull moment here. That's my other way to sell this movie.